Well, good morning, Karen. You know, it's very rare that I get to talk to someone in my own time zone.
Good
Usually
morning,
I'm talking
Ron.
to
Here
people
we
from
are.
Australia or Europe or somewhere else in the world. So I really appreciate you being willing to do an interview today. For those of you that don't know, Karen Hudes is she was over 20 years with the World Bank, and she rose to the position of chief counsel. And I'll let you tell anything else you want to say about yourself, Karen, so that people that don't know you, I'm sure most of the people that listen to this will already know who you are because I've talked about you numerous times on my videos. And thank you. Go ahead.
Well, it's my pleasure to be with you. The best way to describe my position at the World Bank is I was just a nag. One of the best things about the World Bank is it's a knowledge bank, and they did what they call a 360-degree review, which is they asked questions of the people that worked with me, the people that reported to me, and the people that I reported to, and I got a nearly perfect score on the question, tell senior management where they need improvement.
And knowing how banking works, I'm sure they needed lots of improvement.
They did. And of course, I didn't really realize, I knew that wasn't necessarily a good characteristic to have, but they also gave us some assistance to tell us what to do with our scores. And they said, don't just pay attention to where you need improvement. Look to see what you're doing that you have a competitive advantage in. And, so I was contemplating that feedback for a while. And then it dawned on me, I hit 50, and I thought, if I'm not going to do what it is I can do now, when is it that I think I'm going to do it? So I started, I put the pedal to the metal on that, and I got mixed results, as you all can see.
Well, for me, you've been like a breath of fresh air. It's wonderful to have a banker and an attorney, two professions that, from my point of view, need lots of improvement. And here you are telling the truth and presenting what's really going on behind the scenes. And I've been so appreciative since I first heard you probably a month or two ago. I mean, I've been so appreciative of all the interviews that you've done. You were on Russian Today, I think was one of the first interviews that I had, if I remember correctly.
No, the first one I had was in March, and the only reason I had that interview, that was with Veterans Today, and that was because of a whistleblower named Mark Nowitzki, and I found him through a UK whistleblower, Elaine Colville. I'm actually working together with all different whistleblowers. That's how we're trying to figure out, what's what, and Mark is one of the best dot connectors I know. So when we get new information, we just, all of us, discuss what it means. And this is the way that we're figuring out some of the secrets that are hidden in the architecture of the financial system.
Well, there's a lot of things hidden, and most of the world still to this day remains unaware of how the system really works. But many people, on the other hand, are waking up to that, and you're one of the ones that is contributing to that awakening. And so I definitely applaud you on that in that respect.
Thanks. It's a joint effort is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, your image is freezing, going back and forth between being live and freezing. I don't know why that is, but we're gonna go with it anyway. It's showing, the audio is showing that it's recording. And as long as that's good, people will be able to listen as well. We can
always re-record as well. You'll tell me how you want to handle it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. I normally don't re-record things. It's been a long time. When I first started doing my own videos, I wanted to get them perfect. I've given up on that a long time ago, and I just let it fly with whatever is, as long as you can hear it.
Right, and that's what I've also started doing in writing. I used to be terribly, constricted trying to say it perfectly. Now I just say it whichever way comes out. Sometimes I'll go back and correct it, but sometimes I won't.
Right, exactly. I did want to ask you about the global trust accounts. I'm sure you're familiar with the St. Germain World Trust and other world trusts. Swiss Indo and various things, trusts that were put in place a few centuries ago to bless the world, and I believe that's happening at this time. What do you know about the World Trusts and about why they've not been released yet? I've been hearing about them releasing these since 2001, and it still hasn't happened.
Okay, let me start out with Saint Germain and Swiss Indo to say that I think that's misinformation, and it's just there to make it very difficult to verify what's actually concretely there and available. That's my understanding. Maybe I've got it wrong, but that's my current understanding. Now, as far as the collateral account, I can tell you exactly what that is. That I have very good information on. There is a German lawyer named Wolfgang Struck who has been living in the Philippines, and he is the person who's the authorized signatory over the collateral account. It was put together by Ferdinand Marcos, and it is a conglomeration of the world's gold and jewels and art treasures. It's been collected since the colonial times. It's got roughly 4 times more precious metals in it than the World Gold Council reports. It's about 600,000 or 700,000 metric tons. Yes, you heard me correctly. And I can tell you that 170,500 metric tons is on deposit in the Bank of Hawaii. That is intended for the United States. It's to underpin the currency that the United States Treasury Department should issue U.S. dollars. This is what John F. Kennedy was trying to do, and he had signed an agreement called the Green-Hilton Agreement and was killed 10 days after that. And the reason that people were not happy, when I say people, I don't mean the world's people. The world's people would have wanted this very, very much. By the way, Lincoln was also doing the same exact thing, which is to say have the Treasury Department issue the currency for the United States government. And that means that you don't have to pay interest on the country's debt. That's just an arrangement that the bankers have put in place. It started in 1913. Wilson put that in place for us, and he realized on his deathbed what a terrible thing he had done to the United States people for that. And the people behind that, I can tell you because I've been working with various whistleblowers, they put a lot of blame on the bankers. Oh, this is what I said would happen, and it did. Did you see that? Actually,
no. I heard it. I didn't see it.
Okay, well, I just have to arrange my office. You'll excuse me. Everybody can laugh. This is my backdrop. The reason I did this is because in one interview, somebody didn't like my home decor, and they said a world banker wouldn't have such a ratty office. I do respond to criticism. I like feedback. But anyway, so let me get back to what I was saying about, I was right in the middle of a thought. Oh, yeah. So Lincoln was killed because of, he wanted to have the Treasury Department issue the U.S. debt. And what you have in the Constitution is that the states are allowed to recognize gold and silver, precious metals, as legal tender. And several of the states...
That's really what money is.
That's right.
Debt instruments are not money.
No. The current currency system was invented by bankers who wanted to control people. And I was saying, what I was saying before my office fell down, what I was saying was that the current bankers and everybody, I'm not trying to make light of them. People criticize me and say that I'm pulling punches on the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the people who own the Federal Reserve System and are behind the Bank for International Settlement. I'm not pulling punches, but I am saying that these people are Knights of Malta. They are accountants of the Jesuits. It's the Jesuits who are behind this money system and have put it in place for the world's people. And it is the Jesuits who are trying to prevent people from taking the gold, which they are the beneficiaries of. This trust, which is administered, it was put together by Ferdinand Marcos. And by the way, people don't know who he is or how the royalty has been putting their gold into this collateral account. And there's a very interesting genealogy of who these people are. I'll just give you a brief summary. Queen Victoria had a twin brother, and this twin brother was autistic or something. In any event, the court thought he would not make a good king, and so they sent him off to the Philippines. And he then went around the world having, illegitimate children, one after the other. And these illegitimate children have played very large roles, including one of them was Yamashita. And this man collected gold, and it all ended up in one collateral account. And much of this gold, about 400,000 metric tons, is on deposit in banks all over the world, including 12,000 metric tons, which is in Japan. And what we are doing today is we are trying to get the Japanese government to take possession in the Bank of Tokyo of this gold and to use that for their currency. And what happened was when Yamashita and the other people were collecting the gold, they didn't just steal the gold, they gave bonds. And these bonds, some of them carried interest, they're now due. And so all of these bankers that have been charging the countries interest on their debt, they've given huge IOUs that they owe. So you can just change the outstanding money that the countries owe on their debt for these bonds. And so it cancels it out. And what I've said to the Japanese government is whatever's left over after we've canceled out what the bankers owe you for what you owe the bankers, whatever's left, we can talk about rescheduling across the world. We're going to have a mass rescheduling. People talk about debt forgiveness. We don't have to have debt forgiveness. We can have debt cancellation. And don't forget there's interest that's been due. So there's a huge accounting exercise which needs to take place. People need to know about it, and people need to demand it. That's all. It's really very simple. It's not a huge insoluble problem. It's not, people are not allowed to get their Social Security because we're in such debt. That's not the case at all. It's really very simple. It's good news that the bankers don't want you to know about, or the Vatican, or the Jesuits. Tough luck.
Or the courts, or the politicians.
Oh, let me tell you about the courts. This is a really cute story about the courts. The International Court of Justice has known about this gold, and they have come up with a little scheme for how to diddle the world out of the gold. There's a fellow called Hendo Henderson who had a case, and they decided that they would give Hendo Henderson the right to have projects prepared to be funded by this gold. I found out about Hendo, and I said, oh, that's a very interesting thing you're doing, but too bad nobody in the world knows about it. Would you mind letting me know? So he said, would you like to have a project? I said, no, I just simply want to tell people what's going on here because it's not your gold and it's not the gold of the International Court of Justice. And I'll tell you how the International Court of Justice got involved in all of this. There's been litigation about child trafficking. Yeah, now this is not a real court. The case that was brought, again, it was on behalf of the human race. What did people know about it? It was done on the sly. The facts are not out there being vetted by people. The individuals involved are not accounting for themselves. And, I've been in touch with some of the indigenous people in Canada who were ostensibly the beneficiaries of this. They say, well, people are doing things on behalf of us that we are not in agreement about. Why don't we have all of the facts and let us see whether we like it or not? So I guess the takeaway from my interview is that I'm not putting myself in charge of anything. I'm simply letting people know what's going on, and let's have a process that everybody likes, where the information is out there for everybody. Why should this be cloaked in such secrecy and mystery? It shouldn't. Obviously, it shouldn't.
That's the way it is, I think, with everything that I've learned, or whether it's positive information or should say accurate information or not. I've learned about these collateral accounts or global trusts. and there's so much secrecy, deception, whatever you want to call it, and so much, like you said, there's projects that are supposed to be funded. Well, the Swiss Indo is basically, from what I understand, doing something very similar. You said that's not accurate information. It's what has come across my path.
Who appointed them? Who are they accountable to? What do they think they're doing? Why don't they have any answers? This is not acceptable. This is totally unacceptable.
Yeah,
and when I tell you, yeah.
I'd like to see an interview with, of course, they don't, I guess many of them don't speak English, or at least not good English, but it would be nice to have an interview with some of the people that are the key insiders that actually know what's going on there, because there's lots of claims that I've come across.
They have no claim to this stuff. I'm telling you, I have seen a lot of documentation from Wolfgang Struck, and it's perfect. It is absolutely enforceable, and there's no reason for any of these other pretenders. I mean, there have been all kinds of plots and schemes, and there's no reason to bore anybody with it. But I'm just, one of the points I wanted to make is that I have a lot of this documentation. I'm happy to make it available for people to see and for people to come to their own conclusions. That's what people need to do. Don't take my word for any of this stuff. I'll show you what I'm basing my statements on, and you can get other people who are pretenders. They're all pretenders. Let me tell you what some of the schemes are depending on. They're depending on the certification from the Department of Treasury. There's been a huge disagreement between Germany and the U.S. Department of Treasury because Germany asked for its gold back. First, they simply asked to see it, and they weren't allowed to see it. Then the Inspector General in the Treasury Department gave a wacky audit to Germany, which I'll let you see. It said, I haven't looked at the gold. I've looked at the books, the schedule, which describes the gold. And I think your gold is all there. And then it goes on for 4 pages. You can read it, saying sometimes my schedules are a little out of whack. I mean, is that something that Germany should accept? Of course not. So they asked for their gold back. And what was the answer they got from the Federal Reserve? We'll give you the gold in 7 years. That's an act of war. That's an act of war. That's not acceptable.
Well, I know that the Treasury Department paid, I think it was when the Asians wanted their gold back, they were paid in tungsten bars, gold plated. At least that was what was on the internet and widely put out. I don't know if you know it. I'm sure you know about that. I'm sure you've heard it.
No, I mean, I've read about it. But let me give you one other piece of information, which I think is very, very good news. People say that I'm too optimistic and that none of what I'm saying is going to happen, which is rule of law, could possibly happen unless there were an army and unless there were an uproar and until, there's a huge conflict. And what I'm relying my statements and my optimism on is a very, very accurate, it's called power transition modeling. There's a political scientist named Jacek Kugler who came to the World Bank in 2004, and he had developed this game theory modeling tool for the Department of Defense. And when he came to the World Bank in 2004, he said, Karen, we have 5 years before we're going to have a nuclear war in the Middle East. Well, I can tell you what that nuclear war was. That was Syria. We have been working very, very hard. What his model does is it shows where coalitions develop. And I have been writing, and what am I using? I'm using the securities laws. I bought a World Bank bond. I'm not just a lawyer. I'm a bondholder. I own a World Bank bond. I am entitled under the securities laws to accurate financial information. And I have gone to everybody, and I have the oversight authorities, and I have said, the bondholders, the World Bank has $180 billion worth of bonds. I said, you are obligated to protect the bondholders in your state, in your country. And so I am just, it's not a class action suit, although I did get in touch with a California pension, which held World Bank bonds. And I asked the Attorney General in California what she was doing to protect the bondholders in California. So that's what I am. I have the law very well articulated. You cannot have bad financial statements, and the World Bank's financial statements are non-compliant because anybody who tries to correct an error gets fired with no recourse. And they fired me illegally, and the Senate didn't like that and asked for a Government Accountability Office inquiry. So I am simply demanding the enforcement of the securities laws. And I'm telling everybody, I just got off the phone with Australia, I'm telling the people that were listening to that interview to get their gold to back their currency in Australia, because the gold is there and available to them. And the person who's got the authorized signatory over these accounts is just waiting for us to get our ducks in a row. And I have said this to the Japanese, which have 12,000 metric tons in the Bank of Tokyo. And I said, while you're at it, we've got to clean up Fukushima. Yeah? And we don't have a lot of time to waste. And I'm forwarding this email, this exchange with the Japanese, to Australia, because they don't really like all the fallout that they're getting. And by the way, the numbers about the radiation, this is not being reported. So we have a huge global crisis. We have the means for resolving this crisis. And I forgot to tell you, this stakeholder analysis that I've been talking about, there's a UK whistleblower, Elaine Colville. She is, I mean, hands down, this lady, I have never met her in person, but we have been really working hard together. And we've gotten 3 statements up on the UK Parliament website. As soon as that happened, that stakeholder analysis, which is 90 to 95% accurate, said that we would have rule of law. So we are just, you know, we are a force that cannot be held back. The force is information, which I'm giving to everybody here. You can see the study. You can see the analysis of the study. You can see the statements we've gotten up there. And by the way, in 2008, I was talking to then Senator from Nebraska, Chuck Hagel, about what this study was saying about how the U.S. was going to lose the ability to appoint the president of the World Bank, hands down. That's something called the Gentleman's Agreement. In 2008, I said, we have got to get this information out to the public. We've got to stop this corruption, because otherwise we'll lose the Gentleman's Agreement. We lost the Gentleman's Agreement in 2010. Now I'm saying we're going to have a currency war, except we're not going to have a currency war. I mean, one of the things we were talking about, my interview on Russia Today TV, I had 3 of those interviews. Every now and then, you know, the Russians say, how's the progress going, Karen? What can we do to help? But they're being very careful about this, because it is not that I am an agent. Whenever I have an interaction with any of these groups, I send a copy to the Department of Defense. I say, you guys are taking your own sweet time. Why don't you get this thing on the road here? And I hope all of your listeners know what happened in South Carolina yes, okay?
I mean, yeah. I don't know about all of my listeners, but it's been mentioned here.
Well, okay, we were supposed to have a small nuclear bomb go off in South Carolina to create like what happened in the World Trade Center.
Right.
And confusion, and then in the confusion there was going to be an uproar, and then they could have martial law. And what these idiots think is somehow they can get some other confusion going. And see, they wanted to have a world currency, but the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, said, no way, Jose. And they said, we're not even going to use dollars to finance our trade anymore. That's 25% of trade is now no longer being denominated in dollars. And at the end of the day, if one of these countries owe some money, they'll settle it in gold. Yeah? And in the meantime, a number of states have said that silver and gold is legal tender in those states. Yeah? So this Federal Reserve note, it's not sustainable. It's going to go the way of the, dinosaur. They've been issuing dollars in something that they call quantitative easing. They use stupid names. They're just running the printing presses to make the dollar worthless. They wanted to have a crisis happen so that they could introduce a world currency, which isn't happening. What do they have in mind now? They're planning on creating some kind of uproar and issuing something called a Mero, which would combine Mexico and Canada. No way, Jose. We simply want U.S. dollar backed by the 170,500 metric tons of gold in the Bank of Hawaii. And the man who's got signature authority for giving us out of the collateral accounts this gold, designating it to us, Fine. So I'm writing the agreement, and we even found somebody to countersign this agreement. That's sort of a complicated story.
So we're going to go from Federal Reserve notes to silver or gold certificates.
No.
Okay, I'm just asking. I'm curious.
No,
there.
Look, a lot of people say I'm a gold bug, and if you just use gold, that we go back on the gold standard. That a lot of these wealthy bankers are the ones that control all the gold. We're just handing them control again in a different way. First of all, I'm not legislating. I'm a lawyer in between all of the various parties and recommending, and other people have to take decisions. And also, the American citizens, it's about time that they got their way. What I have been saying for them is that there's something called Article 5 of the Constitution, when 2/3 of the state legislatures ask for a constitutional convention, the Congress shall hold a convention. Well,
it's obligated to do so.
That's right. In 1929, the 35th state, Wisconsin, started to get a little huffy and say, what on earth is Congress doing? And since then, we're now up to 49. And by the way, every year, the U.S. Congress declares the United States in a state of emergency and takes away all of our rights. And when we go to court and we think we're in the federal court, no, we're in a military court. And there are all kinds of weird shenanigans going on behind the scenes that we don't even know about.
Karen, let me interject something here. In December 2012, I filed a federal lawsuit in the U.S. District Court in Orlando, the middle district court of Florida, and I read the rules of civil procedure, and it states in the first sentence, in one of the clauses in the beginning of that, it says that all of our rights will be maintained. It says, but once the rules are in effect, the law shall have no effect. It's right there, black and white. And I saw that, and I made it clear. I am not allowing the rules to be in effect. I want the law to be in effect. And we went back and forth, and they ended up saying, well, we don't have jurisdiction, because I wanted them to operate under the Constitution, and they refused to do it. And
no, you're not operating under the Constitution. You are in military court. You weren't even in federal court.
Exactly, and that's why they said they had no jurisdiction.
That's right.
And they refused to make a decision on the case.
Yeah, no, people don't know this. People, when you tell them what's actually the case, they think, when I first heard about it, the two or three times, it took me a long time before I would accept it. It was just too outlandish. I thought the people that were telling me this were just absolutely, it took a lot. So if you're just hearing this for the first time, I'm terribly sorry to be hitting you with a ton of bricks. Go back and look at the papers. Talk to a lot of people. You'll see that, unfortunately, I'm telling you what's really the case. Yeah.
Yeah. People have a hard time grasping the idea that we've been lied to most of our lives.
In such a blatant way.
Indeed.
In such a terribly blatant way. Yeah. No, the gig
they try
is
to
up.
paint conspiracy theorists as being crazies. To me, the people that don't understand the nature of conspiracy are the ones that are crazy, because conspiracies are a given. People that are in power want to maintain their power and control. And they will conspire and do anything, including murder, to accomplish that end.
One of the things that, if anybody's skeptical about my message, I have a chronology, which I kept when I was in the World Bank, of trying to, because I was a lawyer and I knew that things were out of whack, and I knew that if I did certain things, and that they couldn't be out of whack. There was all this money, and the financial statements had to be correct. And, of course, I didn't know about this network of control. One of the things that you ought to read, if you're skeptical still, is you should read a study that was done by 3 mathematicians at the Federal Institute of Technology. They took accurate data on who controls the 43,000 transnational companies, and they modeled it. And they found out that there's one super entity behind all of these companies that owns 40% of the net worth and gets 60% of the annual earnings of all of the companies on the stock markets. I had been going to the Securities and Exchange Commission to try to get the SEC to force the World Bank into compliance. And then I went to the Serious Fraud Office, which called up the SEC, and the SEC just stonewalled. And I knew that you couldn't have that. So I have just been following the rules, both as a bondholder of the World Bank and as a lawyer who I was being interviewed for the job of general counsel, and I said that the World Bank was out of compliance. And I knew that it was the job of the executive search firm to bring the World Bank into compliance. So when I went to the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations that was chaired at the time by Joe Biden with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama on it, see, I have been chasing these people around all these years with all of these legal papers, which are absolutely clear about what the rules are. There's no question. People who own World Bank bonds are entitled to accurate financial statements. They're not getting them. I went to all of the state attorneys general. I said the people that own bonds of the World Bank in your state are not being protected by you. You're falling down on your job. And so the missing ingredient has been telling the public about this. And, I was, being educated about this corruption at the same time as I was trying to fight it. So Elaine Colville, this UK whistleblower, told me to look at some of the SEC whistleblowers. And that's how I found a man named Mark Nowitzki, who's been absolutely phenomenal. He is a guy who worked for a company called Teletech, which Teletech is the one that provides software to Best Buy. All of your information that you've made available to your merchants is now being sold to the government by Teletech. And Mark has been trying to fix this for years and years. Hasn't gotten anywhere, except the two of us joined forces. And he's the one who showed me where the alternative media was. I was just, writing one aggravated letter after the other to the Financial Times. I was just sort of stuck in a little hamster wheel until I found Mark Nowitzki. And he showed me, Veterans Today and all these other alternative media sources and got my information out to the public. And now we've been, steadily making progress to the point now where I'm telling your viewers, talking about the collateral accounts, that's exactly where it's at. There is zero reason why our currency should not be backed by our gold. Yeah, it's just a matter of getting, and I was telling you, there's a counterparty. There's a whole group of sheriffs that want our Constitution back. And one of them is a marshal of environment. And he's willing to be a counterparty. It's a very gutsy thing to do, but he's willing to do that. So I'm in the process of preparing the paperwork and having him sign it. And I've told all of, the Congress that's refused to give the citizens their constitutional convention, I think everybody in this country is going to be given a fait accompli because this guy, his name is Tom Murphy, is willing to sign this paper. And the man who's got the authority over the collateral accounts, Wolfgang Struck, is willing to sign it. So we will have I'll prepare the documents, they will sign it, and we will have clean currency. And then it's going to be up to the people in the audience, your listeners, to say, yes, we back that, we like that agreement. There's no reason why we're not entitled to that agreement. We are entitled to that agreement. That's where we are. So in a day, it's going to really happen. And you people had better back us up. We're counting on you.
Yeah, there's definitely changes that are in the works, and I think a lot of people around the world, even if they don't know what's going on, they can feel energetically that something is happening. And those of us that know what's going on feel it with even a greater intensity. I think we are turning it around. I do think it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yes, it is. It is, I'm telling you. I have the legal authority to write that agreement. The person who's got the legal authority to commit those funds is signing it, and the Marshal of Environment, Tom Murphy, is countersigning it on our behalf. And it is as legal as it gets. And the only way to enforce that is if you people believe that we are authorized. And I'm telling you we are. You doubt it? I'll show you the paperwork. It's just a matter of believing it. It's absolutely ironclad. It is.
Karen, will the provost marshals actually start arresting the people that are standing in the way, or don't you think that's necessary?
I'll tell you about a conversation I had with a guy named Jim Sinclair, who's the world's gold expert. He came to Dulles Airport in Washington to give a conference, And there's a really great guy in Canada who belongs to something called the Canadian something or other on monetary and economic reform. Organization, that's right. Anyway, he bought me a ticket. I went there, and I had a conversation with Jim, who also owns a gold mine, about the collateral accounts and the gold and all of that. And while I was talking to him, some guy in the audience, that I'd been talking to, came up, and he was asking me that question about, let's throw everybody in jail. And I said, that is exactly what we do not want to do. When you are getting the mafia, you take all the little guys and you get them to inform on the Don, and then you stop it. I said, so why are we going to throw all the little guys who have to inform on the Don in jail? We will get nowhere. Why would we do that? Is it that we want punishment or we want a better world? Which do we want? Because we're certainly not going to get a better world if the people who are in power now are told that they're going straight to jail. No, they are not going straight to jail. They are simply helping us take back what is ours, and we are not putting them in jail. And if we can't get their cooperation, we are going to be stymied. So that's my recommendation. As I said, I'm not the decision maker, but anybody can see that that's going to be the dynamic. And it is the dynamic because when I turn on my computer, every day I get emails from, all over the place. People go to my website, kahudes.net. They see the contact form, and I read all of my emails. I'm up all night trying to keep up with all of them. But anyway, so I'm getting a fair number of emails from people who, they're at their desk in these organizations. They see what's going on, and they say, am I going to jail? I'd like to tell you about what I'm doing to try to help you out. Yeah? So people are jumping ship, and we want to accelerate that process. We don't want to slow it down. One of the emails I got, I'll give you a sample, okay? This is a guy who's working on mapping. He said the geo satellites are picking up all of these deposits of the world's minerals, and they are just being, pillaged. People should know about it. The people that are grabbing up these assets that are still in the ground are not entitled to them. There is a huge rape of the earth going on with nobody knowing it. I get that kind of information. We have got to get ourselves in control immediately so that we can stop this pillaging. That's all.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And what you said about it's not about punishment, that goes right along with my video that I did yesterday. So it's right in line with what I've been saying for a good while.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we've used up about approximately 40-some minutes. It's not showing the thing that it used to show. Since I upgraded my Skype, it's not showing what it used to show. So I'm only doing it by a guess. We started just before 10 o'clock. So I think we've, as I said, come to the end of this interview, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I will say that the audio, or I should say the audio was good. I heard you clearly. The video was not always in sync with the audio, and I'll see how that looks when I process it. But we'll probably go with it in either case, because as long as what we're saying is clear, that's the important thing. Because I don't even watch my own videos. I usually listen to them, and I'm looking at emails or doing something else. So right. the audio is the important part. But thank you, Karen. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing what you know. I'm sure you're giving a lot of people something to think about and also something to explore. And if you'll send me on your email any, I can put your webpage on, but any links to any of the things that you mentioned that you think we should have, I'll put those in the blurb for people to look them up.
I'll tell you the document I'll send you. I'll send you the one that's telling the Japanese about their gold and how we've got to get with Fukushima and get that thing cleaned up. And we've got to start moving on that. Yeah, I will. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, and you have a wonderful day.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.